Have you ever made a decision that, in hindsight, was absolutely terrible, but at the time it felt completely irrational? Maybe you backed the wrong strategy, hired the wrong person, or invested in a project that tanked. You told yourself, well, I didn't see that coming. But what if I told you that you did see it coming? You just ignored the signs. And worse, what if I told you that you'll keep making the same mistakes over and over again, unless you understand why? Welcome to the Mammoth in the Room. I'm Nicholas Bocconi, CEO of Mammoth Leadership Sciences, and today we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most dangerous forces in business leadership: decision-making biases. In this new series, we reveal how our ancient survival instincts now sabotage smart business decisions. Today, we'll expose hidden decision-making traps, explain why your brain can mislead you even when you have all the facts, and share 3 strategies to outsmart these biases. Let's dive in, and we do this with a question. Do you think you're a rational decision maker? Well, if you think that, you're wrong. Here's the truth. Your brain isn't wired for logic, it's wired for survival. And that wiring, shaped by millions of years of evolution, doesn't work so well in the boardroom. Let's take a quick trip back in time, say 100,000 years ago. Imagine you are a hunter-gatherer. You're walking through the savannah when you hear rustling in the bushes. Your brain doesn't analyze the situation rationally. It doesn't consider all possible explanations. It makes a snap decision. That could be a predator. Run. That fast, instinctive gut reaction decision-making kept your ancestors alive. Fast forward to today. You're in a high-stakes negotiation, reviewing a financial report or leading a strategy session. The problem? Your brain is still using the same survival wiring. Harvard psychologist Daniel Kahneman, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, explains this using the concept of System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 is fast, automatic, and emotional, great for escaping lions, terrible for analyzing business risks. System 2 is slow, logical, deliberate, but it takes effort and energy, so your brain avoids using it unless absolutely necessary. And guess what? Most of your business decisions are made with System 1, even when you don't know it. That's why understanding biases isn't just a fun intellectual exercise. It's a survival skill for business leaders. If you don't train your brain to challenge its instincts, you'll fall into predictable traps again and again. All right, before we dive in, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a decision-making bias at work? Drop a comment below and let's start the conversation. Now, let's explore some of the biggest decision-making biases lurking in your leadership. You think you're too smart to fall for these? Think again. Even Nobel Prize-winning economists, top CEOs, and world leaders make these same mistakes. So let's first talk about the anchoring trap, when first impressions hijack your thinking. Imagine you're in a salary negotiation. The candidate asks for 150K. Way too high, you think. You counter with 120. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. You just got anchored. The candidate's initial number, 150, planted a mental reference point in your brain. Even though you thought you were making an independent judgment, your mind was already biased by that first number. And funny enough, just recently, I came across an evaluation of a startup company which officially stated, that very mistake as their biggest problem to stay in business. They have developed a highly skilled workforce, but based on their salary negotiations rookiness, they have a hard time to stay even afloat. A classic example of being caught between a rock and a hard place. They can't renegotiate because who would accept a lower salary, and they can't lay them off because then the investment in their highly skilled workforce goes out of the window. Kahneman and Tversky's research in cognitive psychology shows that even completely random numbers can influence our decisions. The first piece of information we get, whether it's a price, a forecast, or an opinion, acts like a mental anchor, pulling all our judgments towards it. What's the lesson? Well, next time you enter a negotiation, recognize that the first number thrown out will shape everything that follows. Use that to your advantage, or learn to push back against it. Then let's move to the next, the status quo bias, when playing it safe costs you everything. Remember Blockbuster? Yeah, neither does Gen Z. In 2000, Netflix approached Blockbuster with a $50 million acquisition offer. Blockbuster turned it down because they considered the company a small niche business with limited market appeal and essentially laughed them out of the room when Netflix co-founder Mark Randolph pitched that deal. Blockbuster executives saw Netflix DVD by mail service as insignificant compared to their brick-and-mortar store model. Why? Because sticking to the status quo felt safer. By the time Blockbuster realized its mistake, Netflix had already redefined the industry, and Blockbuster was extinct. Humans are hardwired to fear change. In prehistoric times, sticking to the familiar meant survival. Trying something new, like eating an unfamiliar berry, could mean death. But in business, clinging to the past can be just as deadly. What's the lesson and the call to action? When making a decision, ask yourself, am I choosing this mainly or just because it feels familiar, safe, well-known, inside the comfort zone? If so, you might be on the fast track to irrelevance. But playing it safe isn't the only trap. Sometimes we cling to past decisions even when they no longer serve us. That brings us to the next pitfall, the sunk cost fallacy, or throwing good money after the bad. Ever found yourself sitting through a terrible movie simply because you already paid for the ticket? That's the sunk cost fallacy. You have not only wasted money, now you're even wasting your time on it. In business, this is why leaders keep funding failing projects, keep underperforming employees, and refusing to cut losses, because walking away feels like failure. What's the lesson? Our call to action? Well, next time you're tempted to double down on a bad investment, ask yourself, would I make this decision if I weren't already invested? Okay, now we know the traps, so how do we avoid them? Here are 3 simple but powerful techniques to sharpen your decision making. 1. Slow down. When faced with a big decision, force yourself to pause. Biases thrive in fast, instinctive thinking. Give system 2 time to kick in. Number 2. Surround yourself with dissenters. Build a culture where people challenge you. If everyone agrees with you, you're probably missing something. Or, as I have it as a chapter in my book, calling it, do not huddle too much. And then number 3, what about this? We all, hopefully, post-mortem our decisions, projects, etc. to identify what went right, could have gone better, can be replicated, avoided, etc. But have you ever heard of this? Pre-mortem your decisions. Means imagine your decision completely fails. Ask, what could be the maximum damage? And then what in that hypothetical future scenario could have gone wrong? Identifying weaknesses, potential traps in advance, helps you to avoid disaster. All right, we've only scratched the surface. As we always say, every business decision since the beginning of businesses has never been anything else than the representation of the human behavior of the people who made these decisions. And biology and evolution tells us that biases shape every business decision you make. But the more you recognize them, the more control you have. In the next episodes, we'll take a deep dive into specific biases, breaking them down one by one with real-world business examples and tools to overcome them. So, if you want to outthink your instincts and make better business decisions, tune in again. All right. Thank you for listening or watching today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and share with anyone who's passionate about leadership. And lastly, if you're interested in more, you can order my book. It has the same title as this podcast, The Mammoth in the Room. It offers a practical roadmap how great leaders and their teams embrace evolutionary truths for outstanding business results. And it does that in 3 sections on people, on strategy, and on implementation. Until next time, lead wisely, think critically, and don't let your brain run your business in an unfiltered way. Nicholas Bocconi, The Mammoth in the Room.